Hello, friend. I'm glad you're here. Pull the covers up a little tighter. Make sure your head is comfortable on the pillow. Tonight, we aren't staying in the warm safety of your bedroom. Tonight, we are going on a little trip. A trip back to a time when London was the center of the world, and also, quite possibly, the worst place on earth to be broke. We are traveling back to the 1840s. I want you to close your eyes and imagine the air. It's not the air you're used to. It's heavy. It tastes like coal smoke and river mud. It sticks to the back of your throat. It's November, of course. In stories like this, it is always November, and it is always raining. But this isn't a refreshing spring shower. This is that miserable, freezing English drizzle that soaks right through your clothes and chills you to the bone. You are walking down a muddy road on the outskirts of town. You're tired. Deeper than just needing a nap. You are exhausted in a way that makes your bones ache with every step. You haven't eaten a proper meal in 3 days. Maybe you had a crust of bread yesterday, or a rotten apple you found in the gutter, but that's gone now. Your stomach stopped rumbling hours ago, now it's just a hollow, cramping knot. You look down at your shoes. They are falling apart. The leather is cracked, and there's a hole in the left sole that lets the freezing mud squish in between your toes. You wrap your thin coat tighter around yourself, but it doesn't do much good. And then, you see it. Looming out of the fog ahead of you. It's a building. But building feels like too nice of a word for this thing. It looks like a fortress. It looks like a prison. This, my friend, is the workhouse. The locals have a nickname for it. They call it the Bastille. If you know your history, you know the Bastille was that famous, terrifying prison in France. The fact that English people were calling their local charity shelter a prison should tell you everything you need to know about what's waiting inside. The architecture is impressive, in a scary sort of way. It's built of dark, gray stone that seems to suck the light out of the day. The walls are high, impossibly high. And if you squint, you'll notice something strange about the windows. They are tiny, and they are placed very high up on the walls. That wasn't an accident. The architects didn't just forget where windows usually go. They designed it that way specifically so that when you are inside, you can't see out. You can see the sky, sure. But you can't see the road. You can't see the trees. You can't see the world you left behind. It's a simple mind game, really. Once you are in, the outside world ceases to exist. You stop walking for a moment. You hesitate. Every instinct in your body is screaming at you to turn around. Run into the woods. Sleep under a bridge. Do anything other than walk toward that big iron gate. You see, in the Victorian era, poverty was looked at a little differently than it is today. Today, if you fall on hard times, most people understand that it's bad luck, or the economy, or just life being difficult. But back then? Oh no! In the 1840s, if you were poor, society believed it was your fault. They thought you were lazy. They thought you lacked moral character. They thought you just enjoyed drinking gin too much. So, the government came up with a bright idea. They passed a law in 1834 called the New Poor Law. And the logic behind it was absolutely brutal. They called it the principle of less eligibility. It's a fancy term, but here's what it actually meant. They decided that life inside the workhouse had to be worse, significantly worse, than the life of the poorest, most miserable laborer outside the walls. If they made the workhouse nice, if they gave you a warm bed and decent food, then everyone would want to come in. And the government didn't want to pay for that. So, they deliberately made it a nightmare. They engineered the suffering. They wanted you to look at this building and think, I would rather die in a ditch than go in there. And for a lot of people, that wasn't an exaggeration. There are records of people starving to death in the streets of London, found with just skin and bones, because they refused to knock on that door. But you You don't have that luxury. Maybe you lost your job at the factory when the new machines came in. Maybe you got sick and couldn't work for a month. Or maybe you're just one of the thousands of people who slipped through the cracks. You stand there in the rain, shivering. You think about the stories you've heard. You've heard they separate families. You've heard they shave your head. You've heard they make you work until your fingers bleed. But then, the wind picks up. It cuts through your wet clothes like a knife. You feel that sharp pain in your stomach again. You realize you can't survive another night out here. The cold will kill you before morning. So, you force your legs to move. One heavy step after another. Squish, squish, squish through the mud. The building towers over you now. It feels like a sleeping beast. There is no sound coming from inside. No laughter, no talking, no machinery. Just a heavy, oppressive silence. It's the silence of a place where hope goes to pack its bags and leave. You reach the main gate. It's a massive wooden door reinforced with iron bands. There is no welcome mat. There is no handle. Just a heavy, black iron knocker in the shape of a lion's head, or maybe a fist. You stand there for a long time, staring at the wood crane. You trace the cracks in the door with your eyes. You know that the moment you lift that knocker, your life as a free person is over. You cease to be a citizen. You become a pauper. You become a number. It's a terrifying thought. But the rain is getting harder now. It's running down your neck. You take a deep breath. You reach out your trembling hand. The iron knocker is freezing cold to the touch. You lift it up, and you let it fall. Boom. The sound echoes like a gunshot in the quiet street. It vibrates in your chest. You wait. For a moment, nothing happens. Just the sound of the rain and your own heart hammering against your ribs. Then, you hear it. The heavy scraping of a lock sliding back. The groan of a rusty hinge. The door cracks open, just a few inches. A slice of dim, yellow gaslight spills out onto the wet pavement. You can't see the face of the person inside yet, but you can see their shadow stretching out toward you. You step forward, out of the rain and into the gloom. Your 24 hours in the workhouse has just begun. And believe me, it is going to be the longest day of your life. The door doesn't open wide. It never does. It opens just enough for a slice of dim, yellow light to cut across the wet pavement. You are standing there, soaked to the bone, shivering so hard your teeth are clicking together like castanets. And standing in that gap, blocking the warmth, is a man. He isn't a monster. He doesn't have horns or a pitchfork. Honestly, that might be easier to deal with. No, this guy just looks bored. He looks like a man who was right in the middle of a decent cup of tea and is annoyed that you interrupted him. This is the porter. And behind him, sitting at a high desk like a judge at the gates of the afterlife, is the man you really need to worry about. He has a very fancy title, the relieving officer. Now, that name sounds nice, doesn't it? Relieving. It sounds like he's there to relieve your pain, or relieve your hunger. Like he's going to give you a warm blanket and a pat on the back. But that is just a little bit of Victorian marketing. The only thing this man is going to relieve you of is your freedom, your dignity, and any hope you had of being treated like a human being for the next 24 hours. You step inside. The first thing that hits you is the smell. It's not a dirty smell, not yet. It's the smell of old stone, damp wool, and intense cleaning chemicals. It smells like a hospital mixed with a prison. The heavy door slams shut behind you. Bang! That sound is important. It's the sound of the world you knew disappearing. The noise of the street, the horses, the shouting, the wind, it's all gone. Instantly cut off. You are now standing in what they call the waiting hall. It's a long, narrow room with a high ceiling. It echoes. Every time you shift your weight, your wet shoes squeak on the stone floor, and the sound bounces around like a trapped bird. There is a wooden bench against the wall, polished smooth by thousands of nervous people who sat there before you. The relieving officer beckons you forward. He doesn't smile. Smiling isn't in his job description. In fact, if he smiles, he might get fired for being too soft. His job is to be the bouncer. He is the gatekeeper. And his main goal isn't to help you, it is to make sure you are desperate enough to be here. You see, the Victorians were terrified of people taking advantage of the system. They were scared that if the workhouse was too easy to get into, lazy people would just move in and live off the taxpayers' money forever. So, this guy's job is to grill you. He needs to make sure you have absolutely nothing left. He dips a quill pen into a pot of ink. Scritch, scratch. The sound is incredibly loud in the quiet room. Name, he asks, without looking up. You tell him. He writes it down. Age? You tell him. Parish of origin? This is a trick question. If you are from a different part of London, or a different village, they won't let you in. They'll put you on a cart and ship you back to where you came from. It doesn't matter if you're starving, you're someone else's problem. But luckily for you, or unluckily, you are from this parish. You belong to them. Then comes the interrogation. And I mean interrogation. Do you have any money? He asks. You shake your head. No, sir. None? Not a penny? Not a farthing sewn into the lining of your coat? He stares at you. He's looking for a lie. If you have even a single coin in your pocket, you are not destitute. And if you aren't destitute, you can't come in. Go buy a loaf of bread and sleep under a bridge. Come back when you're actually dying. Do you have any furniture? He continues. A chair? A cooking pot? A blanket? It seems ridiculous, right? You're standing there dripping wet, clearly miserable. But he has to check. The logic was simple. If you own a chair, you should go sell that chair and buy food. You only come to the workhouse when you have sold the chair, the table, the bed, and the tools of your trade. You have to be at rock bottom. You have to be flatlining. This is the pauper's test. You have to prove that your life has completely fallen apart. He stands up and walks around the desk. He looks you up and down. He might even poke your coat with a stick, checking the quality of the fabric. If your coat looks too nice, he might make you sell it before letting you in. I'm not joking. There are stories of people being told to go sell their decent clothes and buy rags, then come back with the difference in cash spent on food. But your coat is full of holes, and your shoes are falling apart. You passed the test. Congratulations. You are officially worth nothing. He goes back to his big leather book. Scritch, scratch, scratch. Sign here, he says, pushing the book toward you. You look at the page. It's a list of names. A list of broken people. This is the pauper's oath. Now, you probably can't read very well. Most people in your position couldn't, but if you could, you'd realize what you are signing. By putting your mark in this book, you are legally changing your status in society. You are no longer a citizen. You are a pauper. This meant you lost your civil rights. If you were a man who had the right to vote, which was rare, but possible, you just lost it. You lose legal control over your children. You lose the right to decide what you eat, when you sleep, or where you go. You are becoming the property of the Board of Guardians. Your hand shakes as you hold the pen. The ink blots a little on the paper. You make an X next to your name. The relieving officer blows on the ink to dry it. He closes the book with a heavy thud. That sound is the final nail in the coffin of your old life. Right, he says, wiping his hands on a rag as if talking to you made him dirty. You're admitted. He rings a small bell on his desk. Ding. It's a sharp, tiny sound, but it makes you jump. A door on the other side of the room opens. Through there, the officer says, pointing a bony finger. And don't think you're keeping those. He points at your clothes. We don't allow filth in here. You hesitate for a second. You want to ask a question. You want to ask about your wife, or your kids, or what happens next. But the look in his eyes stops you. There is no negotiation here. You are in the machine now. You are just a cog that needs to be washed, sorted, and put to work. You walk toward the inner door. The air getting sucked through the opening is even colder than the hallway. It smells of strong soap, carbolic acid. It smells like a hospital operating room. As you step through, you hear the heavy book behind you being moved, and the scratching of the pen stopping. The relieving officer is already bored again. You are just another name in the ledger. Just another mouth to feed. You have made it past the gate. You have survived the interrogation. But as the inner door clicks shut behind you, you realize something terrifying. The interrogation was the easy part. You are inside now. And the first thing they need to do is strip you of everything that makes you, well, you. Get ready. It's time for the bath. And trust me, it's not going to be a spa day. The door from the admission office clicks shut behind you, and suddenly, the temperature drops about 10 degrees. You are now in the receiving ward. If the waiting hall felt like a purgatory, this room feels like a laboratory. But not a clean, modern science lab. It feels like a place where they dissect things. The walls are covered in whitewashed brick or cracked tiles that sweat with dampness. The floor is stone, and it is slippery. Standing there is an attendant. He isn't a doctor. He isn't a guard. He is likely just another pauper, someone who has been here for years and earned the privilege of bossing around the new arrivals. He looks at you with eyes that have seen everything and are impressed by nothing. He points to a pile of canvas sacks on the floor. Then, he points to your clothes. Off, he says. All of it. Now, you have to remember something about the Victorian era. These were people who covered table legs because they looked too suggestive. These were people who wore 3 layers of wool just to go to the grocery store. Modesty was everything. Being naked was something you only did, well, almost never. Even when people bathed at home, they often did it in stages so they were never fully exposed. But here, in the workhouse, modesty is a luxury. And you can't afford luxuries. You hesitate. Your hands go to the buttons of your coat. You look around. There is no curtain. There is no screen. Just you, the attendant, and the cold, unblinking eye of the institution. You start to undress. First goes the coat, heavy with rain. Then the shirt, which is stained and thin. Then the trousers. You peel them off, and the cold air rushes against your skin. It makes the hair on your arms stand up. You feel small. You feel incredibly vulnerable. Without your clothes, you aren't a laborer, or a father, or a Londoner anymore. You are just a pale, shivering body. The attendant kicks a canvas sack toward you. In the bag, he grunts. You pick up your clothes. They are rags, sure, but they are your rags. They smell like you. They have the shape of your body worn into them. You stuff them into the sack. Then comes the pocket check. This is where it hurts. You have to empty everything. Maybe you have a small coin you found. Maybe a letter from your mother. Maybe a cheap metal wedding ring. In the bag, he repeats. You aren't allowed to keep anything. Not a keepsake, not a charm. The workhouse operates on the idea that you are starting from zero. If you have a past, they want you to forget it. If you have an identity, they want to erase it. You drop your small treasures into the sack. The attendant ties it up tight and attaches a wooden tag with a number on it. That number is you now. Your name is written in a book somewhere, but for the next 24 hours, you're just number 482. Into the tub, the attendant commands. You turn to look at the bath. Now, when I say bath, please don't imagine a nice, steaming porcelain tub with lavender bubbles. Don't imagine a rubber ducky. What you see is a long, metal trough. Or maybe a big wooden barrel cut in half. And the water? Oh, the water. If you are lucky, very, very lucky, you are the first person to be admitted that day. If you are the first, the water might be clean. It might even be warm. But it is late in the afternoon. You are not the first. You are probably the 20th. You look into the water. It is gray. It is thick. There is a film of scum floating on the top, a mixture of grease, dirt, and dead skin from the 19 people who got in before you. They didn't change the water between baths. That would cost money. That would require fuel to heat fresh water. And remember, the goal here isn't to make you comfortable. You recoil. The smell rising off the water is sour. It smells like a wet dog. Get in, the attendant barks. He's not asking. You step over the edge. You lower yourself into the gray soup. It's lukewarm, bordering on cold. It feels slimy against your skin. You try not to think about what is floating around your waist. You just want to get this over with. Then, the attendant hands you the soap. This isn't Dove. This isn't Irish Spring. This is a block of hard, reddish-brown stuff that looks like a brick and smells like a freshly paved road. It's called carbolic soap. Carbolic acid was the disinfectant of the age. It kills germs, sure. It kills lice, absolutely. But it also feels like it's killing your skin. As you scrub yourself with it, it stings. It burns. It creates a chemical heat that makes your eyes water. The smell is overpowering, a sharp, medicinal, tar-like stench that shoots straight up your nose and stays there. If you ever walk into a preserved workhouse museum today, or an old hospital, you might catch a ghost of the smell. For the poor of Victorian England, this was the smell of trauma. You scrub. You have to scrub hard, or the attendant will do it for you, and he uses a scrubbing brush that feels like it's made of wire. You scrub until your skin is raw and red, glowing under the layer of gray water. Out, he says. You stand up, dripping the foul water back into the tub. You step onto the cold stone floor. There is no fluffy towel waiting for you. Maybe a piece of rough, coarse linen that barely absorbs the water. You dry yourself off as best you can, shivering violently now. But you aren't done yet. The attendant points to a stool in the corner. Sit. You sit. You know what's coming. He picks up a pair of shears. Big, heavy metal scissors that look like they belong in a garden shed. Snip, snip. They make a hungry sound. Lice were a huge problem in the slums. The workhouse couldn't risk an infestation. So, the solution was simple. They didn't have special shampoos. They had scissors. He grabs a handful of your hair. Crunch. A clump of your hair falls to the floor. He works quickly. He isn't a stylist. He doesn't care if it looks even. He is shearing a sheep. He cuts it close to the scalp. If you are a man, your beard goes too. If you are a woman and children, well, sometimes they spared the women the full shave unless lice were found, but often, the hair was cropped very short. It was easier to manage. You watch your hair pile up on the wet floor around your bare feet. This is a specific kind of psychological violence. Your hair is a big part of your face. It's part of your personality. Losing it changes the way you look in the mirror. It makes you look like a prisoner. It makes you look like a patient. When he is finished, you run a hand over your head. It feels bristly and strange. You feel lighter, but in a bad way. You feel exposed. You stand up. You are naked, red skin from the harsh soap, smelling of chemical tar, and bald. You look down at your body. You look exactly like the person who came in before you. And you look exactly like the person who will come in after you. The you that walked in from the street is gone. That person has been washed away, shaved off, and stuffed into a sack numbered 482. The attendant kicks the pile of hair aside and points to a bench where a stack of clothes is waiting. But these aren't your clothes. They are heavy, stiff, and ugly. Put 'em on, he says. You walk over to the pile. You are clean, technically. But you have never felt more dirty in your entire life. So, there you are. Standing on the cold stone floor, shivering, bald as a coot, and smelling like a chemical spill. You are looking down at the pile of clothes the attendant just tossed at you. Now, in your head, maybe you're thinking, well, at least I'll be warm. At least I'll have dry clothes. And sure, technically, you are right. But calling these things clothes is a bit of a stretch. It's more like structural engineering made of wool. This is the workhouse uniform. And just like the building, just like the food, and just like the bath, it was designed with a very specific purpose. It wasn't designed for comfort. It wasn't designed for style. It was designed to make sure you never, ever forgot that you were at the bottom of the pile. You reach down and pick up the shirt. It's made of a material called cotton, but not the cotton you're wearing right now. This isn't that soft, breathable stuff you get in a t-shirt. This is thick, coarse, unbleached cotton. It feels stiff, like it's been starched with concrete. As you pull it over your head, it scrapes against your skin. Remember, your skin is already raw from the carbolic soap and the wire brush scrub you just got. So, putting this shirt on feels less like getting dressed and more like wrapping yourself in very fine sandpaper. There are no buttons at the collar, just a string or a rough hole. It hangs on you. It doesn't fit. That's the first thing you notice. Workhouse uniforms came in roughly 3 sizes, too big, way too big, and are you kidding me? They didn't measure you. They didn't care if you were tall, short, fat, or thin. They just grabbed a bundle from the shelf and threw it at you. So, the shirt sleeves hang down past your knuckles. The shoulders droop halfway down your arms. You look ridiculous. And that was the point. It's hard to feel dignified when you look like a child playing dress-up in a giant's laundry. Next, the trousers, or the skirt, if you were a woman. These were usually made of a fabric called fustian or heavy corduroy. Fustian is a thick, twill cloth with a short nap. It's incredibly durable. You could probably build a house out of it. It's designed to last for years and years of hard labor. But it is also heavy. As you pull the trousers on, you realize something missing. A crucial detail. Underwear. In the 1840s, standard issue workhouse kits were, let's say, minimalist. You got the shirt. You got the trousers. You might get a waistcoat, a vest, if it was winter. But soft, comfortable undergarments? Drawers? Undershirts? Not likely. So, that heavy, rough, itchy fustian is rubbing directly against your legs. Every step you take, the coarse wool chafes against your thighs. It creates a constant, low-level irritation. You are always itching. You are always adjusting. You can never quite get comfortable. It's a physical reminder, every single second, that you don't own your own body anymore. You fasten the trousers with a piece of rope or a stiff leather belt that digs into your hips. Then comes the jacket. It's made of gray wool. And when I say wool, don't think merino. Don't think cashmere. Think wire wool. Think of the stuff you use to scrub burnt pans in the kitchen. It's scratchy, it's oily, and it smells faintly of wet sheep and storage closets. You put it on. It's heavy. The weight of the uniform actually drags you down physically. It makes you slump your shoulders. But wait, there's a special feature on this jacket. A little detail that turns it from bad clothing into total humiliation. You look at the fabric closely. Woven into the wool, or stamped onto it in bright yellow or red paint, are markings. Sometimes it's a stripe. Sometimes it's a badge. But often it is the name of the parish. St. Mary's Parish Workhouse. And here is the kicker. Sometimes they printed the name inside the clothes, or they printed it backwards. Why? It was an anti-theft device. If you decided to hop the wall and run away, you couldn't sell these clothes. No rag-and-bone man in London would buy a jacket that said workhouse property on it. It would be like trying to sell a car with police written on the side. You were walking around in stolen goods. Also, it marked you. If you were sent out on a work detail to sweep the streets, everyone knew who you were. You were a pauper. You were living on the public dime. People would cross the street to avoid you. The uniform was a neon sign that said, "I have failed at life." You button up the jacket. The buttons are usually made of bone or cheap metal, and half of them are missing. You pull the collar up to try and stop the draft, but the wind seems to cut right through the weave. Now for the feet. You look at the shoes. Or, should I say, the transportation devices. They are heavy leather boots, or in some places, wooden-soled clogs. You pick them up. They weigh a ton. The leather is hard as rock. It hasn't been oiled in a decade. It's cracked and stiff. You shove your feet inside. There is no arch support. There is no cushioning. And here is a fun fact about cheap mass-produced shoes in the 1800s. Often, there was no left and right. They were made as straights. That means the shoe is shaped perfectly straight. You had to break them in. You had to force the leather to bend to the shape of your foot, which meant weeks of blisters, bleeding heels, and crushed toes. You lace them up. You stand. Clump. You take a step. Clump. These shoes are loud. Hobnails, metal studs, were hammered into the soles to make them last longer. This meant you couldn't walk quietly if you tried. Everywhere you went in the workhouse, you announced your presence. Clump, clump, clump. It added to the noise, the chaos, and the lack of privacy. You couldn't sneak around. The master always heard you coming. Finally, they toss you a cap. A shapeless, woolen bonnet or a flat cap. You jam it onto your newly shaved head. It's itchy against your scalp, but it provides a tiny bit of warmth. You walk over to a small, dirty piece of mirror hanging crookedly on the wall, if there even is one. Most likely, you just see your reflection in a window pane. You look at yourself. The person staring back at you is a stranger. You look like a gray ghost. You look shapeless. You look like a sack of potatoes with a head. This was the great leveling. It didn't matter if, yesterday, you were a skilled carpenter, a struggling artist, or a street sweeper. Once you put on this uniform, you were all exactly the same. You were part of the gray mass. You scratch your arm. The wool bites back. You shift your weight. The clogs pinch your toes. The attendant claps his hands. Right, you're decent. Move it along. He points to a door on the far side of the room. This is the door that leads into the main body of the workhouse. You are clean. You are dressed. You are processed. But as you walk toward that door, dragging your heavy feet, you feel a pit in your stomach. Because you know that up until this moment, you might have still been with your family. Maybe your wife was in the women's line, or your kids were just behind you. But the next room isn't a reunion. The next room is where the real cruelty of the system kicks in. The uniform makes you look the same, but the building is about to make sure you stay apart. You step out of the stripping room and into the open air. You are back in the rain, but you barely feel it now. The shock of the cold bath and the itch of the wool uniform have kind of numbed your senses. You are just a walking gray shape in a world of gray shapes. You are herded into a courtyard. It's a bleak, paved square surrounded by those high brick walls we talked about. It looks like a prison exercise yard, because, well, that's effectively what it is. And this is where you see them. Standing on the other side of the yard, shivering in their own gray uniforms, is your family. You see your wife. At least, you think it's your wife. It takes you a second to recognize her. The beautiful hair she used to brush every night? Gone. Chopped off or tucked entirely under a shapeless white cap. Her dress is that same rough, industrial blue or gray stripe as the other women. She looks smaller. She looks defeated. And your children. They are there too, looking like tiny, frightened ghosts in clothes that are 3 sizes too big for them. Your instinct, your human instinct, is to run to them. You want to grab them, hug them, tell them it's going to be okay, even though you know it probably isn't. You take a step forward. Stand fast. The voice cracks like a whip. It's the master of the workhouse, or one of his assistants. He is standing on a raised step, holding a cane. He isn't looking at you like a person. He is looking at you like a herd of cattle that needs sorting. You freeze. This moment right here is the heart of the workhouse system. This is the great separation. You see, the Victorian government had this obsession with categorization. They loved putting things in boxes. They loved lists. And under the new Poor Law of 1834, they decided that the poor shouldn't be mixed together. They believed that poverty was a moral disease, and you had to quarantine the different types of patients. So, they divided the workhouse into strictly segregated wards. They usually had 7 distinct classes of paupers. You had aged or infirm men. Able-bodied men, that's you, boys, aged 7 to 15, aged or infirm women. Able-bodied women, that's your wife, girls, aged 7 to 15, infants, under 7. It's a bureaucracy of misery. And the rule was absolute, strictly no mixing. The master points his cane to the right. Men. To the male yard. He points to the left. Women. To the female yard. He points to the back. Children. To the schoolhouse. The movement begins. It's a slow, shuffling tragedy. You look at your wife. She looks at you. There are no dramatic speeches. This isn't a movie. You can't run across the rain-slick cobbles and kiss her passionately while the music swells. If you do that, you get thrown in the refractory cell, basically solitary confinement on bread and water for 24 hours. And you are already starving. So, you don't run. You just look. You try to say everything you need to say with your eyes. I love you. I'm sorry. Survive this. She gives a tiny nod. She understands. She turns away, herding the baby, who is still under 7 and allowed to stay with her, toward the women's door. But then, there are your older kids. Your son, maybe he's 8 or 9. He's old enough to be separated. He has to go to the boys' ward. This is the sound that haunts the workhouse. It's not the rattling of chains or the shouting of guards. It's the sound of children being peeled away from their mothers. You watch as an attendant grabs your son by the shoulder. Not violently, just firmly. Businesslike. This way, lad, he says. Your son looks back. He's terrified. He's looking for you to stop this. He's looking for his dad to step in and be the hero. But you can't. You just stand there, clenching your fists inside your itchy pockets until your knuckles turn white. You have to let him go. If you fight, you all get punished. If you fight, they might kick you out, and then you all starve. So you watch him walk away, his oversized clogs clumping on the stones, disappearing through a small wooden door marked boys. Your wife disappears through a door marked women. And suddenly, you are alone. Technically, you are surrounded by 50 other men. They are coughing, spitting, and shuffling around you. But you have never felt more singular in your life. The unit of the family has been dissolved. The state has stepped in and said, "We will feed you, but the price is your connection to each other." The logic behind this was called hard economics, or at least, what the Victorians thought was economics. They believed that if they let families stay together, they would just sit around being comfortable and popping out more kids that the state would have to pay for. They called it the Malthusian trap. They wanted to stop the poor from breeding. So, the workhouse was effectively a celibacy machine. There were stories of husbands and wives who lived in the same workhouse for 10 years and never spoke a word to each other. Maybe, on a Sunday, during the mandatory church service, they might see each other across the chapel aisle. They might catch a glimpse of a familiar profile 3 rows down. But they couldn't wave. They couldn't whisper. They just had to sit there and listen to the chaplain talk about how blessed the poor are. It's a special kind of torture, isn't it? To be so close to the person you love, maybe just separated by a single brick wall, but unable to know if they are okay. You don't know if they are sick. You don't know if they are eating. You just have to trust the system. And looking around at the grim faces of the guards, you don't trust the system one bit. Move it. The guard shoves you. You almost slip on the wet stones. You are herded toward your own door. The able-bodied men's ward. You take one last look at the empty courtyard. The rain is washing away the mud from where your son was standing. The door to the women's ward is shut tight. It looks like a mouth that has snapped closed. You turn and walk into your new home. As you step across the threshold, a heavy iron gate slams shut behind you. Clang. That sound resonates in your chest. It's the sound of finality. You are now property of the parish. You are an inmate. And as the lock turns, you realize the sun is starting to go down. The light is fading from gray to black. You have survived admission. You have survived the bath. You have survived the separation. But now, the real challenge begins. Because now, you have to survive the night. And let me tell you, nighttime in a Victorian workhouse is a whole different beast. The dormitory awaits. And it is not exactly the Ritz. You walk through the door of the able-bodied men's dormitory. And immediately, you hit a wall. Not a brick wall, though there are plenty of those, but a wall of smell. If you thought the unwashed bodies in the waiting room were bad, or the carbolic soap in the bathhouse was intense, this is on a whole new level. This is the smell of 50, maybe 100 men, crammed into a room with windows that are nailed shut to keep the heat in. It smells of stale sweat, damp wool, old breath, and something sharper, something like ammonia. We'll get to the source of that ammonia smell in a minute. You stand there, blinking in the gloom. The room is long. Very long. It stretches out like a tunnel. And lining the walls, row upon row, are the beds. Now, calling them beds is being very generous. They are more like iron shelves. The Victorian workhouse administrators didn't want you getting too comfortable. Remember the rule, less eligibility. If the bed was too soft, you might want to stay. So, they made sure it wasn't. You find your assigned spot. Bed number 42. Let's take a look at your sleeping arrangement for the night. The frame is iron. It's cold to the touch and painted a chipping black. There are no springs. Instead, there are metal slats running across the frame, And on top of those slats sits the mattress. In a modern prison, you might get a foam pad. In a cheap motel, you get springs. Here, you get a flock mattress. Flock sounds soft, doesn't it? It sounds like fluffy sheep. It isn't. Flock was basically the refuse of the textile industry. It was old rags, torn-up uniforms, bits of wool dust, and random fibrous trash, all stuffed into a coarse canvas sack. It was lumpy. It was dusty. And because they didn't wash the stuffing very often, it was usually teeming with fleas. You sit down. Crunch. The mattress is hard. It feels like sleeping on a bag of potatoes. You lie down and pull the blanket up. The blanket is the same scratchy, horsehair wool as your uniform. It's heavy, but it doesn't seem to trap any heat. It just sits on you like a lead weight. But the physical discomfort of the bed isn't the worst part. The worst part is the proximity. You see, space costs money. So, the beds are packed in tight. I'm talking 18 inches apart. Maybe 2 feet if the master is feeling generous. You turn your head to the right, and you are staring directly into the face of the man next to you. He's an old laborer, maybe 50 years old but looking 80. His face is gray. His mouth is open. He has no teeth. He is snoring a wet, rattling snore that sounds like rocks in a blender. You turn your head to the left. The guy on that side is awake. He's staring at the ceiling, eyes wide, muttering something to himself. Maybe he's praying. Maybe he's lost his mind. You don't ask. You are trapped in a sandwich of humanity. There is no privacy. If you itch, they hear it. If you sigh, they hear it. You can feel the body heat of the strangers next to you, but it's not comforting. It's claustrophobic. You close your eyes, trying to force yourself to sleep. You are exhausted, right? You've walked miles, you've been scrubbed raw, you've lost your family. Your body is screaming for rest. But you can't sleep. Because of the light. You open your eyes. It's not dark. In a normal house, you blow out the candle and it's pitch black. But in the workhouse, total darkness was forbidden. The guardians were terrified of what the paupers might do in the dark. They were worried about immoral acts. They were worried about plotting. They were worried about theft. So, the gas lamps are left on all night. They are turned down low, just enough to cast a sickly, flickering yellow haze over the room. And gas lamps make noise. Hiss. 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 It's a constant, serpentine sound that drills into your brain. The light makes shadows dance on the ceiling. It makes the room feel like it's breathing. And then, the symphony begins. If you have ever slept in a hostel with one snore, you know it's annoying. Now imagine a room with 80 men. It starts with a few coughs. A dry, hacking cough from the corner. Then a wet, productive cough from the middle. Tuberculosis, or consumption as they called it, was rampant in these places. It was the #1 killer. And you're breathing the same recycled air as everyone else. Every time the guy next to you coughs, you flinch, holding your breath, hoping the invisible bacteria doesn't find you. Then comes the snoring. It's a chorus. Some are whistling, some are growling, some are choking. It rises and falls like the tide. Then, there are the nightmares. Someone cries out in their sleep. No! No! Someone shouts. Nobody wakes him up. Everyone is too tired. You lie there, staring at the yellow light, listening to the coughing, feeling the fleas starting to wake up and explore your legs. And then, your stomach cramps. You need to use the bathroom. Now, in your house, you'd walk down the hall to the water closet, or maybe use a chamber pot under your bed. Here? There is a bucket. Usually, there is one large bucket or tub placed at the end of the dormitory for night use. It serves everyone. You have to get up. You have to walk down the aisle, past the rows of sleeping, groaning men. Your hobnail boots are too loud, so you try to tiptoe, but the floorboards creak. You reach the bucket. The smell I mentioned earlier? The ammonia? This is it. It's an open container of human waste that has been sitting there for hours. It stings your eyes. You do your business as quickly as possible, trying not to breathe through your nose, trying not to look at it. You feel degraded. You feel like an animal. This is what the system does. It strips away the little dignities, one by one, until you stop caring. You walk back to your bed. You crawl back under the scratchy blanket. You try to think of home. You try to think of your wife in the women's ward. Is she sleeping? Is she crying? Is the baby warm? But your thoughts keep getting interrupted. Cough. Cough. Hiss. Sneeze. Groan. The hunger comes back. It gnaws at your belly. You regret not licking the bowl clean at dinner. You fantasize about food. Roast beef. Potatoes. Thick slices of bread with butter. The images are so vivid they hurt. You drift in and out of a shallow, feverish doze. You never really hit deep sleep. You just hover in a gray area between waking and nightmares. You check the window. It's still pitch black outside. Time seems to have stopped. You feel like you've been in this bed for a year. And just as you finally start to drift off into a real sleep, just as your muscles start to relax. Clang, 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 clang. The sound is deafening. It's not a polite alarm clock. It's a massive brass bell being rung aggressively by the master in the hallway. It's 5 a.m. Rise and shine. Out of beds. Now. The man next to you jolts awake with a gasp. The room erupts into chaos. Men are groaning, coughing up the night's phlegm, swinging their legs out onto the cold floor. You sit up. Your head is pounding. Your eyes feel like they are filled with sand. Your body aches from the iron slats. You have survived the night. But you haven't rested. Not even for a minute. And now, the real work begins. There is no snooze button in 1840. There is no gentle marimba alarm on your phone. There is no sunlight peeking through the curtains to gently rouse you from your slumber. There is only the bell. It cuts through your dream, which was probably about a nice, hot meat pie like a chainsaw. It's loud, it's metallic, and it is incredibly aggressive. It rings and rings, echoing off the stone walls of the dormitory, bouncing inside your skull until you have no choice but to open your eyes. You gasp. The first thing you notice is the darkness. It is 5 a.m. in November. In London, that means it is still the middle of the night. The windows are black squares. The gas lamps are still hissing their sickly yellow light. It feels wrong to be awake. Your body is screaming at you that it has only been asleep for 10 minutes. And honestly, considering the snoring, the fleas, and the hard mattress, maybe you really did only get 10 minutes of actual sleep. But the second thing you notice, and this is the thing that really wakes you up, is the cold. During the night, while you were huddled under your scratchy blanket, the temperature in the dormitory dropped. And it didn't just drop a little bit. The Victorian Workhouse was not known for its central heating. In fact, heating the dormitories was seen as an unnecessary expense, and also, heaven forbid, a luxury that might make the poor soft. So, you wake up, and you can see your breath. You exhale, and a cloud of white steam puffs out into the yellow light. It hangs there for a second before vanishing. You look around. 80 other men are sitting up in their iron beds, all exhaling white clouds. It looks like a room full of dragons, except these dragons are freezing, starving, and miserable. Out. Everyone out. Movement. Let's go. The wardmaster is storming down the aisle. He is wide awake. He has probably had a cup of coffee. You hate him instantly. You throw off the blanket. This is the hardest moment of the day. Leaving that tiny, pitiful pocket of warmth you managed to create under the wool. You swing your legs out. Your bare feet hit the floorboards. Shock. The wood is freezing. It feels like stepping onto a block of ice. The cold shoots up your legs, making your muscles cramp. You stumble a little. Your joints are stiff. You feel like an old man, even if you're 25. The dampness of the room has settled into your bones during the night. Now begins the frantic scramble. You have to get dressed. Fast. There is no leisure here. You don't get to sit on the edge of the bed and check your messages. You have minutes to be fully uniformed and standing in line. You grab your shirt from where you folded it, or threw it, the night before. It's cold. Putting it on is like wrapping yourself in a wet sheet. You shudder as the coarse fabric hits your skin. You fumble with the buttons or the strings, but your fingers are numb. They feel like frozen sausages. You can't make them work properly. You button the wrong hole. You curse under your breath. Less talking. More dressing, the master shouts, banging his cane on the end of an iron bed frame. Clang. You jam your legs into the stiff fustian trousers. You pull them up. They are still itchy. Then, the boots. Oh, the boots. During the night, the leather has stiffened up even more. It's like trying to put your foot inside a wooden box. You stomp your foot down. Clump. You struggle with the laces. The leather bites into your heel. You know that within an hour, that blister from yesterday is going to pop, but you don't have time to worry about it. You jam your cap on your head. You look around. The room is a chaotic scene of gray ghosts hurriedly pulling on gray clothes. Coughing fits are erupting everywhere. The morning air is full of dust from the shaken blankets. Line up. By the beds. Now. You scramble to the foot of your bed. You stand at attention. Or, at least, as close to attention as you can manage while shivering uncontrollably. This is the roll call. It's a military tradition adapted for the poor. The idea was simple. They needed to count you. They needed to make sure nobody had escaped during the night, which was hard to do, and, more grimly, they needed to make sure nobody had died. And I'm serious about that. Sometimes, a man wouldn't wake up when the bell rang. The person in the next bed would have to shake him. If he didn't move, well, that was one less mouth to feed. The porters would come with a stretcher, haul the body away to the dead house, and the rest of you would just shuffle up to fill the gap in the line. The master walks down the row. He has a clipboard or a ledger. Number 480. Here. Number 481. Here. Number 482. That's you. Here, you croak. Your voice is raspy. Your throat is dry as sandpaper. He looks at you. He checks your uniform. If a button is undone, or if your cap is crooked, or if you look insolent, which basically means looking him in the eye, you could be in trouble. Punishment in the workhouse wasn't usually physical beatings, though that happened. It was usually dietary restriction. Imagine being told that because your shoe was untied, you don't get your lunch today. When you are already starving, that is a terrifying threat. So you stand perfectly still. You stare at the back of the head of the man in front of you. You try to stop shivering, but you can't. Once everyone is counted, there is usually a brief, mandatory wash. You are marched to the washroom. It's a row of basins with cold water. No hot water. Never hot water. You splash the freezing liquid on your face. It wakes you up, sure, but it also makes your skin sting. You wipe your face with a communal towel that is already damp from 50 other guys. Hygiene was a concept they tried to enforce, but in a crowded institution, it was mostly just a ritual. Then, you form up again. Now, you have to wait. This is a big part of the workhouse experience, the waiting. You are dressed. You are washed. It is maybe 5:30 a.m. now. You stand in the corridor, or back in the dorm, waiting for the signal to move to the dining hall. Your stomach is waking up. It realizes it is empty. It starts to growl. It starts to cramp. You remember that watery gruel you had last night? Yeah, that burned off about 6 hours ago. You are running on fumes. You start to hallucinate about breakfast. You wonder what it will be. You know what it will be, it's always the same thing, but your brain tries to trick you. Maybe today there will be bacon. Maybe today there will be toast. Spoiler alert, there will be no bacon. The man next to you sways a little. He's weak. You instinctively lean away, but then you lean back a little, just in case he falls. If he falls, it causes a scene. And scenes mean delays. And delays mean you don't eat. You look out the window. The sky is starting to turn a dark, bruised shade of purple. The sun isn't up, but the blackness is fading to gray. You have survived the night. You have survived the wake-up. But now, the day actually begins. And the first order of business is fuel. You need to put something in your body before they march you off to the work yards. Finally, you hear it. The distant sound of another bell. A slightly smaller bell. Dining hall. March. The column of gray men starts to move. Clump, clump, clump. You walk like zombies towards the smell of boiling oats. It's not a good smell, but right now, it is the most beautiful scent in the world. Let's go see what's on the menu. You are marched into the dining hall. If the dormitory was a barracks, this room is a factory floor. But instead of building cars or weaving cotton, the product being manufactured here is survival. Just barely. The room is massive. It has high vaulted ceilings, which might look impressive in a cathedral, but here, they just serve to trap the cold air and amplify the noise. Long, wooden tables run the length of the room. They are scrubbed white, not because they are clean, but because thousands of elbows have rubbed the varnish off over the years. You take your place on a bench. There are no chairs with backs. You sit up straight. You don't talk. Talking during meals is strictly forbidden. The master stands at the front of the room like a hawk, watching for a whisper, a giggle, or a complaint. If you speak, you lose your food. And right now, losing your food is a death sentence. In front of you is a bowl. It's made of tin or pewter. It's dented. It has the scratches of 1,000 hungry spoons etched into the bottom. And inside the bowl is the breakfast of champions. The fuel for the Industrial Revolution. The legendary Victorian culinary disaster known as skilly. You stare down at it. Steam rises from the bowl, hitting your cold face. It smells vague. It smells like wet grain and hot water. So, what exactly is skilly? If you look at a modern oatmeal packet, you see pictures of cinnamon and apples. Skilly is the evil twin of that oatmeal. It is a mixture of oatmeal and water. That's the base. Sometimes, if the guardians were feeling generous, or if the law required it, there might be a splash of milk. But we're not talking creamy whole milk. We're talking blue milk, skimmed milk that has been watered down until it has a translucent, bluish tint. And the texture? It isn't fluffy. It's a gray, gelatinous glue. In some workhouses, it was so thick you could stand your spoon up in it. In others, it was so thin it was basically hot, dirty water with some grain grit at the bottom. But here is the most terrifying part about this meal, the weighing. You see, the Victorian government didn't just guess how much food to give you. They calculated it. They had scientists and nutritionists work out the absolute minimum amount of calories a human being needed to not die. They created dietary tables. 6 ounces of bread. 1.5 pints of gruel. And they were obsessed with accuracy. Not because they wanted to make sure you got enough, but to make sure you didn't get too much. As you walked in, you might have seen the scales. The food is weighed out with precision. If a serving woman accidentally gives you an extra spoonful, she could be fired. If she gives you too little, well, that's just too bad for you. There were actual riots in workhouses over the weight of bread. Men would take their ration to the master and demand it be weighed again if they thought it was light. It was the only currency you had. An ounce of bread was the difference between fainting at noon and making it to dinner. You pick up your spoon. It's cheap metal. It tastes like a penny. You take the first bite. Slurp. It's hot. That's the best thing you can say about it. The heat spreads through your chest, thawing out your frozen ribs. But the taste? It's bland. Aggressively bland. There is no sugar. There is no butter. There is usually no salt, unless you added it yourself from a communal pot, but salt makes you thirsty, and water breaks are regulated. It tastes like wallpaper paste. It coats your tongue. It's gritty. Sometimes, you crunch down on something hard, a husk, a small stone, maybe a bit of dirt that got into the oats. You don't spit it out. You swallow it. It's mass. It fills the hole. You eat quickly. Everyone does. There is a frantic energy in the room. You can hear the sounds of 300 men eating simultaneously. The scrape of the spoon against the tin. The slurp of the gruel. The heavy breathing. It's not dining. It's refueling. It's animalistic. You look around. The man across from you is practically inhaling his bowl. He wipes a drop of skilly from his chin with a dirty finger and licks the finger clean. He eyes your bread. Oh yes, the bread. Along with your skilly, you usually got a small piece of bread. Maybe 4 or 5 ounces. This wasn't a nice fluffy loaf. It was often day-old, or week-old. It was hard. You had to dunk it in the skilly just to soften it enough to chew. But you have to make a strategic choice. Do you eat the bread now? Or do you hide it in your pocket for later? If you eat it now, you feel full for an hour. If you save it, you risk it being stolen, or getting caught with contraband food in the workyard. Most men eat it now. The hunger is too immediate to plan for the future. You finish the bowl. You scrape the bottom. Scrape, scrape, scrape. You are trying to get every single molecule of carbohydrate. And then, it's over. Breakfast lasts maybe 15 minutes. You sit back. You feel the warm sludge sitting in your stomach. It feels heavy, like a hot stone. But here is the science of starvation I mentioned in the title. This diet was designed to keep you alive, but keeps you weak. It was high in carbohydrates but very low in protein and fats. It gave you a quick burst of energy that crashed a few hours later. It made you lethargic. It made you docile. It's hard to rebel, hard to fight the guards, hard to organize a protest when your blood sugar is crashing and your body is consuming its own muscle for energy. The diet was a form of control. By keeping you on the edge of hunger, that gnawing, constant emptiness, they kept you focused entirely on the next meal. You couldn't think about politics. You couldn't think about freedom. You could only think, when is dinner? The master blows a whistle. Tweet. Spoons down. Stand up. The noise stops instantly. You drop your spoon. You stand up. You aren't satisfied. In fact, eating has almost made it worse. Now that your stomach has woken up, it realizes how empty it still is. The skilly has tricked your body for a moment, but the hunger is already prowling around the edges, waiting to come back. And you're going to need more than watery oats for what comes next. Because now, you aren't going back to bed. You aren't going to sit by a fire and read the paper. You are going to the workyard. You are about to find out why they call it a workhouse. And the job they have lined up for you today? It's going to make you wish you were back in the freezing dormitory. Get your fingers ready. They're about to start bleeding. Welcome to your office. You have been marched out of the dining hall, through a series of drafty corridors, and into a long, low-ceilinged room. It looks a bit like a school classroom, but instead of desks, there are benches. And instead of books, there are piles of garbage. Well, not garbage, exactly. It's rope. But this isn't nice, clean rope you buy at the hardware store. This is junk. That is the actual technical term for it. These are old, used ropes bought from the Royal Navy or merchant ships. They have spent years soaking in the salty Atlantic Ocean. They have been dragged through mud, baked in the tropical sun, and covered in grit. And, most importantly, they are soaked in tar. Years ago, sailors would coat these ropes in black tar to waterproof them. Over time, that tar has hardened. It has turned the rope into something that feels less like hemp and more like petrified wood. It is hard. It is sticky. It is black. Your job. You have to turn this hard, fossilized rope back into soft, fluffy fiber. This is called picking oakum. It sounds almost quaint, doesn't it? Like something a hobbit might do on a Sunday afternoon. Picking oakum. But in the Victorian era, those two words were enough to make a grown man cry. You sit down on a hard wooden bench. There is no back support. You will be sitting here for 10 hours. The overseer walks by and drops a bundle of this old rope at your feet. It lands with a heavy thud. It looks like a dead snake. 3 pounds, he grunts. By sundown. That is your quota. 3 pounds of finished fiber. It doesn't sound like a lot. A bag of sugar is 2 pounds. But you aren't lifting it. You are unpicking it. You pick up a piece of the rope. It's about as thick as your wrist. It's cold and greasy. The smell hits you instantly. It's the smell of old ships, pine tar, salt water, and decay. It's a sharp, chemical scent that sticks to the back of your throat. You start. You have to find the end of the rope. You dig your fingernail into the tight weave. It's rock hard. You pull. Nothing happens. You pull harder. Snap. That was your fingernail. Welcome to the first 5 minutes. You realize you can't just untie it. You have to destroy it. You have to pound it against your knee to loosen the strands. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Then, you have to hook your fingers into the braid and pull with everything you have. Slowly, reluctantly, a single strand comes loose. Now, you have to take that strand and rub it. You roll it against your thigh. You roll it between your palms. You have to break the tar. You have to crush the fibers until they separate and become fluffy again. Why? What is the point of this? Well, believe it or not, this stuff was actually useful. The Navy bought it back to jam between the planks of wooden ships to make them watertight. So, in a way, the British Empire was kept afloat by the bleeding fingers of the poor. But let's be honest. The master doesn't care about the ships. He cares about the punishment. Oakum picking was the perfect workhouse labor because it required zero skill, zero tools, and maximum misery. It was designed to be monotonous. It was designed to be boring. It was designed to hurt. After an hour, your fingertips are numb. After 2 hours, the numbness wears off and the pain starts. The rope is abrasive. It's like handling steel wool. It wears away your skin. First, it takes the calluses. Then, it takes the soft skin. Then, it starts to find the nerves. And the tar. The tar is the enemy. As your hands warm up the rope, the old tar starts to melt slightly. It becomes sticky. It gets under your nails. It gets into the cracks of your skin. It acts like an irritant. Your hands turn black. Not just dirty, stained. You look like you're wearing black gloves. If you have a cut, and you will have a cut, the tar gets into the wound. It burns. It stings. But you can't stop. You look up at the clock on the wall. You figure you've been working for hours. It has been 45 minutes. This is the psychological torture of the oakum room. The silence. Talking is usually forbidden here, too. So, all you hear is the scritch-scratch of rope being teased apart, the heavy breathing of the men around you, and the occasional cough. Your mind starts to eat itself. You replay your life. You think about every mistake that led you here. You think about the warm pub you used to go to. You think about your bed. The boredom is heavy. It presses down on you. You look at your pile of finished oakum. It's a small, fluffy pyramid of brown fibers. It looks pathetic. It barely weighs anything. You look at the heavy coil of rope still waiting for you. It looks huge. Panic sets in. 3 pounds, the overseer said. What happens if you don't hit the quota? It's simple. You don't eat dinner. Or, they reduce your breakfast tomorrow. It's a brutal calculation. You need food to have the energy to pick the oakum. But if you don't pick the oakum, you don't get the food. It's a spiral. The weaker you get, the slower you work. The slower you work, the less you eat. The less you eat, the weaker you get. This is how the workhouse breaks you. It isn't a sudden snap. It's a slow erosion. Like the rope fibers, you are being teased apart, strand by strand. You look at the man next to you. He's an old-timer. He's been here for years. His hands are interesting. They are shaped like claws. His fingers are permanently curled. His skin is like leather, scarred and stained so deeply that the black will never wash off. He has that oakum claw. He is working with a strange, robotic rhythm. Pull, roll, drop. Pull, roll, drop. He doesn't look at the rope. He is staring at the wall, 1,000 miles away. He has checked out. He is a machine now. You try to copy him. You try to find a rhythm. Pull. The crick gets under your nail. You wince. Roll. The friction burns your thigh. The fustian trousers are wearing thin, and your leg is getting raw. Drop. A tiny pinch of fluff falls onto the pile. You do this again. And again. And again. Thousands of times. The air in the room is filled with dust, tiny particles of hemp and dry tar. You breathe it in. It coats your lungs. You cough. The spit comes up black. This is your life now. You aren't a human being with dreams and opinions. You are just a biological machine designed to recycle garbage. And the worst part? The thought creeps into your head, is this it? Is this all I'm good for? The workhouse wants you to believe that. It wants you to internalize the idea that you are worthless. If they can make you believe you deserve this, you won't fight back. The sun moves across the sky outside the eye windows. You can't see it, but you can see the beam of light shifting on the dusty floor. Your stomach growls. The skilly is long gone. Your fingers are bleeding now. Just a little. Small cracks around the cuticles. The blood mixes with the tar, making a sticky paste. You wipe it on your trousers. You keep picking. Because you know that at 6 p.m., the scales come out. The master will bring the brass weights. He will weigh your pile. And if the scale doesn't tip, you go to bed hungry. But here is the scary part. As bad as the oakum room is, as much as it hurts your fingers and numbs your mind, it is considered the light work. It's the work they give to the old men in a week. If you are young, fit, and strong, if you look like you have some muscle on your bones, the master has a different job for you. He's walking over to you now. He taps your shoulder with his cane. He says, "You're too slow. And you look healthy. Get up." You stop picking. You look up. "Report to the boneyard," he says. You feel a chill. You've heard whispers about the boneyard. You've heard the men talking about the smell. You stand up. Your legs are stiff. You wipe your black, sticky hands on your sides. You leave the quiet misery of the oakum room. You are heading for something much louder, much harder, and much, much grosser. Get your stomach ready. You're going to need a strong one. You step out of the oakum room and into the boneyard. If the oakum room was purgatory, a place of boring, endless waiting, then this place is the inner circle of hell. The first thing that hits you isn't the sight of the work. It isn't the sound. It is the smell. It is a thick, physical wall of stench. It smells like a butcher shop that lost power 3 weeks ago in the middle of a heat wave. It smells of old blood, rotting marrow, and decay. It makes your empty stomach do a somersault. You gag, covering your nose with your sleeve, but the smell is so strong you can practically taste it. It coats your tongue. You look around. In the center of the yard are piles. Massive, chaotic mountains of bones. These aren't nice, clean, bleached skeletons like you see in a museum. These are green bones. That's the industry term. It means they still have bits attached to them. Gristle. Fat. Cartilage. Maybe even scraps of meat that the butchers didn't think were worth selling. They come from cows, horses, pigs, anything that died. And your job? You have to turn these mountains into dust. The master points to a station. It's a heavy stone box or a metal grate. He hands you your tool. It's called a tamper or a rammer. Basically, it's a massive iron block attached to a long wooden handle. It weighs about 20 pounds. "Dust," he says. "I want dust." You look at the pile of cow femurs in front of you. They look as hard as rock. You lift the heavy iron rammer. Your shoulders protest immediately. You bring it down. Crack. The bone splinters. A shard flies up and hits you in the cheek. It stings. You lift the rammer again. Crack. You have to pound it until it fits through a tiny wire mesh sieve. That means you aren't just breaking it, you are pulverizing it. You are making bone flour. Why? Why on earth is the British government paying you, well, feeding you, to smash animal skeletons? Fertilizer. Farmers discovered that bone dust was amazing for growing turnips. So, in a cruel twist of irony, the starving men of the workhouse are breaking their backs to make fertilizer to grow food that they will probably never get to eat. You find a rhythm. Lift. Smash. Lift. Smash. After 10 minutes, your arms are burning. The lactic acid is building up in your muscles. Remember, you are running on watery oatmeal. You don't have the protein to support this kind of heavy lifting. Your body starts to shake. But you can't stop. If you stop, the quota isn't met. If the quota isn't met, the skilly is withheld. It's the same old trap. But then, something worse starts to happen. The dust. As you smash the dry parts of the bones, a fine white powder puffs up into the air. It hangs there like a fog. You breathe in. Cough. The bone dust coats the inside of your nose. It gets into your throat. It feels sharp and gritty. You try to spit it out, but your mouth is too dry. You swallow it. You are literally breathing in the dead. Your eyes start to water and sting from the particles. You look at the other men working in the yard. They look like ghosts. They are covered head to toe in white powder. Their eyelashes are white. Their uniforms are white. They look like millers who work with flour, but instead of the smell of fresh bread, they smell of death. And then, there are the flies. Because the bones are green and smelly, the flies are everywhere. Big, shiny bluebottles. They land on your face. They land on your sweaty neck. You can't swat them away because your hands are busy with the 20-pound hammer. You just have to let them crawl. It drives you crazy. It's a constant, tickling reminder of the filth you are standing in. But there is a darker side to this job. A side so dark that it actually caused a national scandal. As you work, you pick up a large beef bone. It's fresh. You notice there is still some gristle clinging to the end. There is a streak of marrow inside, deep in the hollow of the bone. Your stomach growls. It's a violent, painful growl. You look at the rotting meat on the bone. In your normal life, the life you had 24 hours ago, you would have thrown up at the sight of it. It's disgusting. It's spoiled. But now, your brain does something scary. It stops seeing rotting garbage and starts seeing calories. You look around. Is the master watching? This actually happened. In 1845, at the Andover Workhouse, the conditions were so bad and the men were so starved that they started fighting over the bones. They would crack them open and suck out the putrid, rotting marrow. They gnawed on the stinking gristle just to put anything in their stomachs. It was shocking. When the public found out, there was an outcry. They called it the Andover Scandal. It proved that the workhouse system wasn't just strict, it was dehumanizing. It turned men into scavengers. You feel that temptation now. You look at that marrow. It smells terrible, but your body is screaming at you to eat it. Just a taste, your brain whispers. It's fat. It's energy. It will stop the pain. You lift the bone toward your mouth. Then, you see the master turn his head. You drop the bone quickly. Smash. You crush it into dust. You crush the temptation along with it. You keep working. The sun beats down on the yard, or the rain turns the bone dust into a white sludge. Your hands are blistering. The handle of the rammer is rough wood. The blisters pop, and the raw skin rubs against the wood. The bone dust gets into the open sores. It burns like fire. You are exhausted. Your back feels like it's going to snap. But the pile of bones never seems to get smaller. Every time you clear a section, a cart comes along and dumps more. Rattle, crash. Another heap of skulls and ribs. It feels endless. It feels like you are being punished for simply existing. You look at the guy next to you. He stops for a second to wipe the sweat/dust mixture from his forehead. He leaves a streak of mud across his face. He looks broken. There is no light in his eyes. He is just a piston in a machine. This is the purpose of the hard labor. It's not just about the fertilizer. It's about breaking your spirit. They want you to be so tired, so broken, that you will do anything to leave. They want you to leave and never come back. They want to make the workhouse so terrifying that you will take any job, for any wage, just to avoid this place. Smash! The hammer comes down again. The vibration travels up your arms and rattles your teeth. You wonder if your own bones will end up in a pile like this one day. If you die here, in the dead house, and nobody claims you, do you become fertilizer too? It's a grim thought. But in a place like this, grim thoughts are the only company you have. Finally, after what feels like a lifetime, you hear a whistle. The hammering stops. The silence that follows is ringing in your ears. You drop the heavy rammer. Your hands stay curled in a grip shape, frozen by cramps. You can't straighten your fingers. Yard cleared. Move out. You stumble away from the bone pile. You are covered in white dust. You smell like a slaughterhouse. You are starving. You are bleeding. But you have survived the work shift. The sun is dipping low. The day is almost over. You are guided toward another door. The master says it's time for exercise. You almost laugh. Exercise? You just spent 10 hours swinging a sledgehammer. You don't need exercise. You need a hospital bed. But the workhouse runs on a schedule, not on logic. So, you drag your aching feet toward the exercise yard. You think it might be a nice break. Maybe a chance to sit down? Oh, friend. You are so wrong. Sitting down is not in the rulebook. You leave the boneyard, your lungs coated in white dust, your hands trembling from the weight of the hammer. Your body is screaming for a chair. It is screaming for a moment to just sit, hunch over, and let your spine recover. But in the Victorian workhouse, rest is a dirty word. Rest leads to idleness. And idleness, they believed, leads to sin. So, instead of a chair, you are marched into the airing yard. Now, airing yard sounds pleasant, doesn't it? It sounds like a place where you might take a leisurely stroll, maybe admire a flower bed, maybe smoke a pipe. But as you step through the gate, you realize this is no garden. It is a box. A giant, brick box without a lid. The walls here are incredibly high, maybe 12 or 15 feet. They are built of that same dark, imposing industrial brick as the rest of the complex. And they are designed very carefully. Even if you stand on your tiptoes, even if you are 7 feet tall, you cannot see over them. You can't see the street. You can't see the trees. You can't see the houses of the free people living just a few hundred yards away. The only thing you can see is the sky directly above you. It's a psychological trick called containment. By removing the horizon, they remove your sense of direction. You don't know where north is. You don't know which way is home. You are just here. Walk, the guard bellows. And so, the walking begins. There is no destination. You are simply required to walk in a large circle around the perimeter of the yard. You join the line of men. You fall into step. Clump. 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 The sound of the wooden clogs on the cobblestones is hypnotic. It echoes off the high walls, creating a drone that fills your head. You look at the feet of the man in front of you. You watch his heels lift and fall. Lift and fall. You stare at the cracks in the leather of his boots. This becomes your entire world. This is the exercise. It seems cruel, doesn't it? You have just spent 10 hours picking oakum or crushing bones. You have burned more calories than you have eaten in 2 days. Why make you walk? It wasn't for fitness. It was for discipline. It was to keep you moving so you couldn't gather in corners and plot. It was to keep you too exhausted to rebel. As you walk, you lift your eyes to the center of the building. The workhouse is often built in a specific shape. It's usually a cross, or a hexagon, with a central hub. And facing out from that central hub, looking down into every single yard. The men's yard, the women's yard, the boys' yard are windows. This is the panopticon. It's a design concept invented by a philosopher named Jeremy Bentham. The idea was to build a structure where one guard, standing in the center, could see everyone, but no one could see the guard. You look up at those dark, dusty windows in the central tower. Is the master watching you right now? Maybe. Maybe he is standing there with his cup of tea, watching you trudge in circles like a pony at a fairground. Or maybe the room is empty. But the genius of the design is that you don't know. Because you can't see him, you have to assume he is always watching. You have to assume that every stumble, every whisper, every scowl is being recorded. So, you police yourself. You keep your head down. You keep walking. You behave, because the eye of authority might be upon you. It creates a paranoia that settles deep in your gut. You never feel alone, but you always feel lonely. Clump. 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 Your feet are agony. Remember those stiff, unlined boots? By now, the blisters on your heels have burst. The leather is rubbing against raw, red skin. Every step is a sharp sting. But you can't limp. Limping draws attention. Attention brings punishment. So you grit your teeth and march on the pain. The wind swirls around the yard. It acts like a funnel, trapping the cold air and spinning it around you. You wrap your thin jacket tighter, but it does nothing. But here, in the noise of the clogs and the wind, is a secret. The workhouse telegraph. Talking is forbidden. But humans are social creatures. We find a way. You notice the man next to you isn't looking at you, but he has drifted slightly closer. He keeps his eyes fixed forward, his face like a stone mask. But his lips barely move. New shipment from Whitechapel, he whispers. It's barely a breath. You don't turn your head. You just keep walking. You whisper back, hardly moving your mouth. Bad fever, out there, he says. Lots of dead. This is how news travels. Snippets. Rumors. Tragically, it's usually bad news. You hear about plagues in the city. You hear about wars. You hear about which workhouse master is the cruelest. Sometimes, you hear about your own family. Saw a lad, in the boys' yard, the man might whisper. Red hair. Coughing bad. Your heart stops. Your son has red hair. Is it him? Is he sick? Where? You hiss, forgetting the rules for a second. Keep walking, the guard shouts from the corner. He strikes his cane against the wall. Whack. You snap your mouth shut. You lower your head. You keep walking. The panic rises in your throat. You want to run to the boys' yard. You want to scale that 12-foot wall and find him. But you can't. You are trapped in the circle. The panopticon is watching. If you run, you get the refractory cell. And if you are in the cell, you can't protect anyone. So you swallow the fear. You push it down into the pit of your stomach where the hunger lives. You look up at the sky again. It's late afternoon now. The clouds are heavy and purple, moving fast. You see a bird, a seagull, or a pigeon flying over the yard. It glides over the wall, crosses the open space, and disappears over the other side. It takes the bird about 3 seconds to cross the space that is your entire universe. You feel a pang of jealousy so strong it almost hurts. That bird is free. It can go down to the river. It can look for crumbs in the market. It can go wherever it wants. You, a grown human being, are less free than a pigeon. The futility of the walking starts to weigh on you. If you were walking to somewhere, it would be bearable. If you were walking home or walking to a job, there would be a purpose. But walking in a circle is a special kind of madness. You are expending energy to go nowhere. It makes you feel like a hamster in a wheel. It emphasizes that your time, your energy, and your life have no value. Your legs feel like lead. The numbness of the labor is wearing off, replaced by a sharp, throbbing ache in your knees and back. You start to count the bricks in the wall just to keep your mind from breaking. 1, 2, 3, 4. You wonder what time it is. You can't see a clock. The only clock is the bell. And just as you think you can't take another step, just as you think your legs are going to buckle under you, tweet. The whistle blows. The circle stops. The clump sound dies away, leaving a sudden, ringing silence. Face the wall. You turn and face the brickwork. Form up. Dinner parade. Dinner. The word sparks a tiny, pathetic flicker of excitement. It means the day is almost done. It means you get another bowl of something warm. But as you turn to leave the yard, you look back one last time at the eye wall separating you from the boys' yard. You think about the whisper you heard. You think about the red-haired boy coughing. You don't know it yet, but that whisper is going to haunt you. Because while you were crushing bones and walking in circles, the most vulnerable members of your family, the children, were facing a nightmare of their own. And trust me, the children's ward makes the boneyard look like a playground. While you are marching in circles in the exercise yard, staring at the bricks and worrying about your family, let's take a trip across the wall. Let's go see where your children ended up. If you have read Charles Dickens, you probably have a picture in your head of the workhouse child. You picture Oliver Twist holding up his bowl, asking, "Please, sir, I want some more." You might think that's just a story. You might think it was exaggerated for drama. The sad truth is, Dickens was actually holding back. The reality of the children's ward was often much quieter and much sadder than anything in a book. You walk into the schoolroom. The first thing you notice is the silence. If you walk into a modern elementary school, what do you hear? You hear yelling. You hear laughter. You hear feet running. You hear the chaotic, happy energy of being alive. Here, you hear nothing. There are 50 children in this room, ranging from about 7 to 14 years old. And they are perfectly, terrifyingly still. They are sitting on long wooden benches, hunched over slate boards. They look like miniature versions of the adults you just saw. They are wearing the same scratchy, ill-fitting gray uniforms. The boys have their heads shaved to the scalp to prevent lice. The girls have their hair cropped short, looking severe and joyless. They don't look like children. They look like little old men and women. Their faces are pale. Their eyes are sunken, with dark circles that speak of bad food and cold nights. And their eyes, there is something wrong with their eyes. In the 1840s, a disease called ophthalmia swept through workhouse schools like wildfire. It was an eye infection caused by dirty water and shared towels. It made the eyes red, swollen, and crusty. If left untreated, and it often was, it led to blindness. So, when you look around the room, half the children are squinting, or have bandages over their eyes, or are just staring blankly into the dark. At the front of the room stands the schoolmaster. He isn't a teacher in the way you think of a teacher. He didn't go to college to learn about child development. Often, the schoolmaster was just a failed tradesman, or even another pauper who could read and write a little bit. His job wasn't to expand their minds. His job wasn't to help them dream of a better future. His job was to teach them their place. The education in a workhouse was designed to be basic. Very basic. They learned to read the Bible. They learned to write their names. And they learned arithmetic just enough to count money or measure wood. But the main subject? The main subject was obedience. They spent hours reciting catechisms and hymns. There is a famous hymn from this time that sums up the whole philosophy. The rich man in his castle, / the poor man at his gate, God made them, high or lowly, and ordered their estate. Think about that. These starving children were being forced to memorize a song that told them, "You are poor because God wants you to be poor. The rich man is in his castle because God likes him better." Don't complain. Don't try to change it. This is your lot in life. It was brainwashing. They were training these kids to be the next generation of servants and laborers. They were crushing their ambition before it even had a chance to grow. The schoolmaster holds a cane. It's a long, flexible piece of rattan. And he uses it. A lot. If a child slouches, whack. If a child drops their slate, whack. If a child cries for their mother, whack. That last one is the hardest to watch. Remember, these kids have parents in the same building. A 7-year-old boy knows his mom is just on the other side of the wall. He might cry out for her at night, but he is told that he is wicked for crying. He is told that his parents are paupers and that he should be ashamed of them. The system tried to break the bond between parent and child. They wanted the child to look to the state as their father. And when school was over, was there recess? Was there tag? Not really. In the play yard, there were no swings. No slides. No balls. Just a paved square. Sometimes, the boys were given drill. They were marched back and forth like little soldiers. Left, right, left, right. The guardians loved this. It made the kids look disciplined. It prepared them for the army, which was where most of the boys would end up anyway. But the scariest part of being a workhouse child wasn't the school. It was the exit strategy. You see, the workhouse didn't want to keep these kids forever. Kids eat food. Kids cost money. So, as soon as a child was old enough, sometimes as young as 9 or 10, the guardians tried to get rid of them. They apprenticed them out. This sounds like a job opportunity. But in reality, it was often legalized human trafficking. Factory owners from the industrial north would come down to London workhouses looking for cheap labor. They would sign a contract with the workhouse master. They would take 20 or 30 boys and girls, load them onto a cart, and drive them away. The parents? They often weren't even told. You could be picking oakum in the adult ward, thinking your son is in the schoolroom, while he is actually on a wagon halfway to a cotton mill in Manchester. You might never see him again. And the jobs were dangerous. The cotton mills were death traps. Children were small enough to crawl under the giant spinning machines to pick up loose cotton. If the machine snatched their sleeve, well, I don't need to describe what happened. Or, if you were a small boy, you might be sold to a chimney sweep. This was the worst fate of all. They needed small boys to climb inside the narrow, soot-choked chimneys of rich people's houses to clean them. These climbing boys would scrape their knees and elbows raw. They would breathe in coal dust until their lungs turned black. Many of them got stuck and suffocated. Others developed a horrible cancer from the soot. The workhouse guardians knew this. But they signed the papers anyway. It got the child off the payroll. It saved the taxpayers money. So, when you look at these children sitting in the classroom, scratching on their slates, you realize they are sitting in a waiting room. They are waiting to be sold. But that's assuming they survive that long. The mortality rate in the children's wards was shocking. In some years, in the worst workhouses, nearly 50% of the children admitted didn't see their 5th birthday. Measles. Whooping cough. Scarlet fever. Dysentery. When a disease got into the ward, it ripped through the rows of beds. And remember, the diet was skilly. These kids had no immune systems. They had no fat on their bones to fight off a fever. They just faded away. The dead house behind the workhouse always had a stack of small coffins ready. It was just part of the routine. You look at a little girl in the back row. She is maybe 6. She is clutching something in her hand. You look closer. It's a piece of rag. She has tied a knot in it to make a head. It's a doll. A secret, illegal doll. She is stroking its head with her thumb, staring at the floor. She is completely silent. This is the Oliver Twist reality. It isn't a plucky adventure where you sing songs and eventually find a rich grandfather. It is a grinding, silent machine that takes the innocence of childhood and crushes it into dust, just like those bones in the yard. You turn away. It's too hard to look at. The bell rings again. Clang. It's time for the children to march to their supper. They stand up in unison. There is no chatting. No giggling. Just the scrape of wooden clogs and the swish of the cane. You are back in your own body now, back in the adult yard. But the thought of what is happening in that schoolroom makes the hunger in your stomach feel a little less important. But you can't dwell on it. You can't afford to be depressed. Because now, you notice something. You notice a man in your line collapse. He just drops. Like a puppet with the strings cut. He hits the cobblestones hard. He doesn't get up. The guards don't run to help him. They sigh. They look annoyed. They call for a stretcher. They are taking him to the infirmary. And if you think the workhouse is bad, wait until you see the hospital. It's the place people go when the workhouse has finally finished breaking them. Let's follow the stretcher. You watch the stretcher disappear through a set of double doors. The man who collapsed in the yard is gone. You might be thinking, well, at least he's going to the hospital. At least he'll get a doctor, some medicine, maybe a soft pillow. If you were in the 21st century, you would be right. But this is 1840. And the workhouse infirmary is not a place where people go to get better. It is, for the vast majority of its patients, simply a waiting room for the inevitable. Let's step inside those doors and see what lies in the sick ward. The first thing that hits you is the heat. Unlike the freezing dormitory or the drafty workyard, the infirmary is kept hot. But it's not a cozy warmth. It's a stifling, humid heat. The windows are nailed shut to prevent drafts, which doctors at the time believed caused disease. So, the air in here has been recycled 1,000 times. It is thick. It tastes metallic. And the smell? If you thought the unwashed bodies in the main dorm were bad, this is a whole new level of olfactory assault. It is a cocktail of gangrene, unwashed bed linen, stale sweat, and the sickly sweet scent of rotting flesh. And underneath it all, cutting through the decay like a knife, is the smell of cheap gin. We'll get to the gin in a moment. You look at the beds. They are crammed in just as tight as in the sleeping dorms. There is no privacy curtains. There are no beeping machines. Just row after row of iron beds occupied by skeletons with skin stretched over them. In a modern hospital, you have different wards for different problems. You have a cardiac ward, an infectious disease ward, a fracture clinic. Here, it's a lottery. In bed number 1, there might be a man with a broken leg from a factory accident. In bed number 2, right next to him, breathing the same air, is a man in the final stages of tuberculosis, coughing up blood. In bed number 3, there is a patient with typhus fever. It was a mixing bowl of contagion. If you came in with a broken ankle, there was a very high statistical probability that you would leave in a coffin because you caught cholera from your neighbor. But surely, the nurses help? You look around for a nurse. You are expecting Florence Nightingale, a calming presence in a white apron, holding a lamp, speaking softly. That is not who you find. In the early Victorian workhouse, professional nursing didn't exist yet. The nurses were usually just other pauper women. They were often the ones who were too old or too weak to work in the laundry or the kitchen. They weren't trained. They didn't know how to clean a wound. They didn't know how to measure a pulse. And, most famously, they were often drunk. The job was horrible. Cleaning up filth, dealing with the dying, surrounded by death 24/7. To cope, these pauper nurses were often paid in beer or extra rations of gin. You see an old woman shuffling down the aisle. Her apron is stained. Her hair is a mess. She is holding a bottle of medicine in one hand and a spoon in the other. She looks at a patient who is moaning in pain. "Hush now," she snaps. "Or you'll get nothing." She isn't there to comfort. She is there to maintain order. There are horror stories from this era of nurses stealing the rations of the dying patients. If a man was too weak to eat his bread, the nurse would eat it for him. If he had a warm blanket, she might take it for herself. And the doctor? The workhouse medical officer was usually a young, inexperienced doctor, or a very old one who couldn't get private patients. He was paid a fixed salary, usually very low, to cover everything. He might visit once a day. He would walk briskly down the aisle, glance at the charts, maybe prescribe a blue pill, a mercury-based cure-all that was actually toxic, or a dose of treacle water. He didn't have antibiotics. He didn't have painkillers. If you were in agony, you just had to be in agony. There was no morphine drip. There was prayer, and there was water. You walk over to the bed of the man who collapsed. He is awake now, but barely. His eyes are glassy. His skin is yellow, jaundice, perhaps, or liver failure from years of drinking cheap spirits to numb the pain of poverty. He looks at you. He looks scared. Because he knows where he is. The psychological terror of the infirmary is worse than the physical pain. Imagine lying in that bed. You can't move. You are weak. And all day, every day, you are forced to watch the people around you die. You hear the death rattle, that specific, gurgling sound a throat makes when the lungs are failing. You hear it from the bed to your left. Then, silence. Then, the nurses come. They don't pull a curtain. They just wrap the body in a sheet, heave it onto a cart, and wheel it away. Then, they strip the bed, flip the mattress, maybe, and 10 minutes later, a new patient is put in the same warm spot. It makes you realize how replaceable you are. You aren't a person, you are just occupying a space that the state wants back. And if you are lying in a bed near the window, you have the worst view in the house. You look out the window. Down below, in a small, shadowed courtyard, is a small brick building. It sits apart from the others. It has a wide door. This is the dead house. It's the mortuary. But it's not a sterile lab. It's a shed. Every day, you watch the cart go back and forth. You count the bodies. 1, 2, 5. And you see the shell coffin. To save money, some workhouses used a reusable coffin for the funeral service. It had a hinged bottom. They would carry the body to the grave, say the prayers, lower the coffin, pull a lever, and the body would drop out into the hole. Then, they would pull the empty coffin back up and use it for the next guy. Even in death, you didn't own your own box. And there is one final horror haunting the infirmary patients. The Anatomy Act of 1832. Before 1832, doctors could only dissect the bodies of executed murderers to learn anatomy. But medical schools needed more bodies. So, the government changed the law. They decided that if a pauper died in the workhouse and no family came to claim the body within 48 hours, the body could be donated to science. Lying in your infirmary bed, you know this. You know that if your wife in the women's ward doesn't hear about your death in time, or if she can't afford a funeral, which she can't, you won't be buried. You will be cut up on a table by medical students. It was the ultimate final indignity. The poor terrified the rich while they were alive, and then served them after they were dead. The man in the bed closes his eyes. He is breathing shallowly. You back away. You feel like an intruder. You step back out into the corridor. The air out here is cold, but it feels fresh compared to the rotting soup of the sick ward. You take a deep breath. You realize something important. You have to survive. You cannot get sick. You cannot fall down. Because if you end up in that room, with the drunken nurses and the mercury pills, you are never coming out. The fear of the infirmary is what keeps the men in the boneyard swinging their hammers. It's what keeps the women in the laundry scrubbing until their hands bleed. Anything is better than the sick ward. But the day isn't over yet. There is still one more hurdle. One more test of your endurance before you are allowed to return to your flea-infested mattress. The casual ward is filling up for the night. And trust me, the people arriving there have stories that would make your hair stand on end. As the sun sets over the workhouse walls, turning the gray stone to a bruised purple, a different kind of line is forming at a different gate. So far, we have been talking about you as an inmate. That means you are a resident. You live here. You sleep in the big dormitory. You are part of the permanent population of misery. But there is a lower circle of hell. There is a specific part of the workhouse designed for the wanderers, the drifters, and the homeless travelers who are just passing through. This is the casual ward. Or, as the people of the road call it, the spike. Why the spike? Some say it's named after the tool used to pick oakum. Some say it refers to the hardness of the beds. But mostly, it's just a sharp, nasty word for a sharp, nasty place. If you look out the window of your dormitory, you might see them lining up. These are the vagrants. They are the men, and sometimes women, who walk the roads of Victorian England. They are looking for work, or running from the law, or simply lost. They are dusty. Their boots are wrapped in rags. They have the wild, hollow look of people who haven't slept under a roof in weeks. They only want one thing, a bed for the night. But the Victorian Workhouse didn't give anything away for free. If you wanted a roof over your head, you had to pay for it. And since these men had no money, they paid in sweat. The system for the casual ward was even stricter than the main house. When a casual arrived, they were searched. Thoroughly. If they had money, even a single penny, they were turned away. If they had a pipe, tobacco, or a knife, it was confiscated. Then, they were bathed. But unlike your communal bath, the casuals were often scrubbed down with extra vigor, because the guardians were terrified of the diseases these travelers might bring in from the road. Smallpox. Typhus. Cholera. These men were seen as biological weapons. And then, they were locked up. In the later Victorian period, they developed a special architecture just for the casuals. It wasn't a dormitory. It was a row of cells. Imagine a small, brick room. It's about 4 feet wide and 8 feet long. It looks exactly like a prison cell, because that's effectively what it is. Inside, there is a wooden plank for a bed. Maybe a rough blanket. But there is a second door in the cell. A door that leads to a tiny, enclosed working space. And in that space, there is a pile of rocks. This is the stone-breaking cell. The deal was simple. You stay for the night, you get a bowl of gruel, usually watered down even more than the inmate's gruel, and in the morning, before you are allowed to leave, you have to break a specific amount of stone. Granite. Limestone. Hard, unforgiving rock. The task was ingenious in its cruelty. Built into the wall of the cell was a metal grid or a mesh. The holes in the grid were small, maybe an inch or two wide. Your job was to take a heavy hammer, smash the rocks, and keep smashing them until the pieces were small enough to be pushed through the holes in the grid to the outside yard. You couldn't cheat. You couldn't hide the rocks. The only way the rocks left the cell was through those tiny holes. And until the pile was gone, the door stayed locked. Imagine doing this at 6 a.m. after sleeping on a plank. Clink. You hit the granite. Sparks fly. A shard of stone shoots up and hits your cheek. It cuts you. Clink. The vibration travels up the handle of the hammer. Your hands are already blistered from the road. Now, the blisters tear open. The handle gets slippery with blood. You are isolated. In the main workhouse, you at least have the other men to cough and shuffle with. Here, you are alone in your box. Just you, the hammer, and the stone. It was designed this way to prevent the contamination of laziness. The guardians didn't want the tramps talking to each other, sharing tips on which workhouses were soft or swapping stories about the road. They wanted to crush the camaraderie of the vagrant class. You smash a rock. It splits. But the pieces are still too big. They won't fit through the grid. You have to hit them again. And again. The dust fills the tiny cell. You are breathing in granite powder. It coats your lungs. And the pressure. You know that the sooner you finish, the sooner you can get back on the road. The road is hard, but at least on the road, you are free. In here, you are a rat in a cage. Some men, the old hands, were good at it. They knew exactly where to hit the rock to make it shatter. They could clear their pile in a few hours. But for the new guys, the fallen gentlemen, the clerks who lost their jobs and are walking to Liverpool to find work, they would pound away for hours, crying in frustration, their hands raw pulp, the pile barely moving. There are stories of men who simply refused. They sat on the floor and said, "No." Do you know what happened to them? They were hauled before the magistrate. Under the Vagrancy Act, refusing to work in the casual ward was a crime. They were sent to actual prison, hard labor, for 14 days. And here is the dark irony. For many of them, prison was actually better. In prison, the food was regulated. It was slightly better than workhouse gruel. The cells were sometimes warmer. It says a lot about a society when going to jail is an upgrade from the charity shelter. As you sit in your dormitory bed, listening to the wind, you might hear the faint, rhythmic tap 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 coming from the casual ward. It's the sound of desperation. Those men are breaking stones not to build a road, but to buy their freedom for the day. They are pulverizing granite just to earn the right to walk out the gate and starve in the open air rather than starve in a cage. The spike was the ultimate deterrent. It was the Victorian way of saying to the homeless, "We will help you, but we will make it hurt. We will make you wish you had slept in a ditch." And many did. Many vagrants would risk hypothermia sleeping under a hedgerow rather than face the humiliation and the torture of the stone-breaking cell. You pull your thin blanket up to your chin. You are hungry. You are cold. You miss your wife. But listening to that distant hammering, you realize one small, bitter truth. At least you aren't in the spike. At least you don't have to break rocks tomorrow morning. You just have to pick rope. The night deepens. The gas lamps hiss. The coughing in the dorm gets louder. You have almost made it. You have almost survived the 24-hour cycle. But the day isn't officially over until the lights go out. And before you sleep, if you can sleep, you have to face the final psychological hurdle. The lock-in. The moment when you realize that the door doesn't just keep the world out. It keeps you in. Finally, the whistle blows. The sun has gone down completely now. The windows of the workhouse are black squares reflecting the gaslight inside. You drop your tools. If you were picking oakum, you drop the last few strands of sticky rope. If you were crushing bones, you let the heavy rammer fall to the ground. If you were walking in the yard, you stop your endless circle. Your body is screaming. It's not just tired, it is mechanically failing. Your back is locked in a hunch. Your hands are stuck in the shape of a claw. Your feet, inside those wooden-soled boots, feel like they have been beaten with hammers. But you made it. You survived the workday. The master shouts, "Form up. Supper." You would think, after 10 hours of hard labor, you would rush to the dining hall. You would run. But nobody runs. You don't have the energy to run. The column of gray men moves like a dying snake through the corridors. You lean against the wall as you walk. You bump into the shoulder of the man in front of you. He doesn't complain. He's too tired to care. You enter the dining hall again. It looks exactly the same as it did at breakfast, but the mood is different. At breakfast, there was a nervous energy. A desperation to get fuel for the day. Now, it's the energy of a battery that is at 1%. You slide onto the bench. You stare at the table. And there it is. The feast. The reward for your blood, sweat, and tears. Supper. In many workhouses, supper was different from breakfast. No hot skilly this time. This was a dry meal. You look at your plate. Sitting there, looking sad and lonely, is a hunk of bread. And next to it, a small wedge of cheese. Let's talk about this cheese. This isn't a nice, creamy brie. It isn't a sharp, crumbly cheddar. This is what was affectionately known as mousetrap. It is yellow, sweating, and hard enough to be used as a doorstop. It has a rind on it that feels like plastic. And the bread? It's the same seconds bread from the morning, but now it has been sitting out all day. It is stale. It is dry. You pick it up. It feels light, like a piece of pumice stone. You take a bite. Crunch. It requires actual physical effort to chew. Your jaw muscles ache. You have to grind it down, mixing it with saliva just to make it swallowable. And remember, you are thirsty. You've been sweating in the boneyard or the laundry all day, and water breaks were scarce. So eating this dry bread is like trying to eat a mouthful of sawdust. But you eat it. You eat it with a fierce intensity. You tear off a piece of the rubbery cheese. It tastes salty and vaguely sour. It's pure protein and fat, so your body welcomes it, but your taste buds are revolting. There is no talking. The silence in the hall is heavy. The only sounds are the chewing, the occasional cough, and the clinking of tin mugs if you were lucky enough to get a splash of water or broth. You look around the table. The faces of the men are gaunt. The gaslight casts long shadows under their cheekbones. They look like skulls with skin. The man across from you has finished his cheese in one bite. Now he is staring at yours. He isn't going to take it. Stealing food is punished by the refractory cell, but he is eating it with his eyes. You turn away, hunching over your food, protecting it with your elbows. This is the animal instinct kicking in. You finish the last crumb. You run your finger over the plate and lick it. You want to make sure you got everything. But you aren't full. You are never full. You are just slightly less empty. And now, as the heavy fog of digestion starts to mix with the exhaustion, your eyelids start to droop. You want to sleep. God, you want to sleep. You want to put your head down on this hard wooden table and pass out right here. But you can't. Not yet. Because the Victorian Workhouse was a moral institution. They didn't just want to punish your body, they wanted to save your soul. The master bangs his cane on the floor. Whack. Prayers. A door at the front of the hall opens, and in walks the chaplain. Now, picture this contrast. You and 300 other men are filthy. You are covered in bone dust, tar, and sweat. You are starving. You are wearing rags. And in walks a man who is clean. He is wearing a crisp black cassock. He has a white collar. He looks well fed. His cheeks are rosy. He probably just came from a nice dinner of roast mutton and port wine at the master's house. He stands at the lectern. He opens a big, leather-bound Bible. "Let us pray," he booms. His voice is loud. It's a preacher voice full of authority and projection. It bounces off the vaulted ceiling. He starts to read. And this is where the dark irony of the workhouse really shines. He doesn't read passages about suffering or injustice. He reads the Beatitudes. "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." You sit there, your backside numb on the hard bench, and you think, well, I must be royalty then. Because I am definitely poor. He continues. "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." You look at the master standing by the wall with his cane. He doesn't look meek. He looks like he owns the earth right now. You, on the other hand, are very meek, and all you have inherited is a bowl of gruel and a flea infestation. The chaplain launches into a sermon. He talks about gratitude. He talks about how lucky you are to be in a Christian country that provides charity for its citizens. He tells you that your poverty is a test from God, and that if you work hard and obey your masters, you will be rewarded in the next life. It is a drone. A long, monotonous drone. Buzz, buzz, buzz. And this is the real challenge. Staying awake. The room is warm now, heated by the bodies of the men. The food is sitting in your stomach. The chaplain's voice is rhythmic. Your eyes close. Your head dips. Snap. You jerk awake. You look around in panic. Did the master see you? Falling asleep during prayers is an offense. It's considered disorderly conduct. It shows a lack of respect for God and the guardians. You pinch your own leg. You bite your lip. Stay awake. Stay awake. You watch the man 2 seats down. His head is bobbing. Down, up, down, up. He is fighting a losing battle. Suddenly, the master is there. He moves silently for a big man. Poke. He jabs the sleeping man in the ribs with his cane. Not hard enough to break a bone, but hard enough to hurt. Pay attention, the master hisses. The man jumps, his eyes wide with fear. He sits bolt upright, trembling. The chaplain doesn't even pause. He is used to this. He just keeps reading about the lilies of the field and how they don't toil or spin. Easy for the lilies to say, you think. They don't have to pick oakum. It drags on for 20 minutes. It feels like 20 years. Finally, the chaplain closes the book. Amen. And then, the room mumbles back. It's a low, collective groan. The chaplain leaves. He walks out the door, back to his warm study and his glass of wine. You are left in the hall. The master steps forward again. To the dorms. Single file. No talking. You stand up. Your legs have stiffened up while you were sitting. You stagger a little. The march begins again. But this is the final march. The march to oblivion. You are going back to the room with the iron beds and the yellow gaslight. You are going back to the coughing and the snoring. But at least the day is done. The physical torture is over for a few hours. As you shuffle out of the dining hall, you see the relieving officer locking the big front door of the workhouse. He slides the heavy bolts. Clunk. Clunk. You are sealed in. You walk up the stairs to the dormitory. The air gets colder as you go up. You reach your bed, number 42. It looks exactly as you left it. The blanket is still crumpled. The mattress is still lumpy. You sit down to take off your boots. Your fingers are so stiff you can barely undo the laces. But just as you get one boot off, you hear a sound. A sound that signifies the absolute end of the day. The lock-in. The psychological horror of knowing you are trapped is about to set in. You are back in the bed. Number 42. You have taken off your boots. Your feet are throbbing, radiating heat as the blood rushes back into your crushed toes. You have crawled under the scratchy, horsehair blanket. You are lying on the lumpy flock mattress that smells of old dust. Physically, the day is over. Your muscles can stop moving. Your hands can stop picking. Your jaw can stop chewing. But this is the moment where the workhouse plays its final, cruelest card. It's not physical torture. It's psychological. You are lying there, staring up at the ceiling, watching the shadows from the gas lamp dance back and forth. And then, you hear it. The wardmaster is at the door. He steps out into the hallway. He pulls the heavy wooden door shut. Slam. And then, the sound. It's the sound of a large, iron key being inserted into a lock. It turns. Click. Clack. Then, he rattles the handle once, just to be sure. He walks away. You hear his footsteps fading down the corridor. You are locked in. Now, you might think, so what? I lock my front door at night. But there is a very big difference. You lock your door to keep the world out. The workhouse locks the door to keep you in. In that split second, the dormitory stops being a bedroom and starts being a cage. You realize that for the next 9 hours, you have absolutely no agency. You are a grown adult, maybe you're a father, a skilled craftsman, a person who used to vote, but right now, you have less freedom than a toddler. If you are thirsty, you can't get water. If you feel sick, you can't leave to find a doctor. If you just need a moment of peace, you can't walk away. And then, a specific, terrifying thought creeps into your mind. It's a thought that haunted every single inmate in Victorian London. Fire. You look at the gas lamp hissing on the wall. It's an open flame. You look at the floorboards. They are old, dry timber, soaked in years of dust and grease. You look at the mattresses. They are stuffed with rags and straw. This room is a tinderbox. And the door is locked from the outside. History is full of stories of workhouse fires. If a spark jumped, if a lamp fell, this room would turn into an oven in seconds. And you would all be trapped, rattling the handle, screaming for a master who might be asleep 3 floors down. That fear settles in your chest. It sits right on top of your lungs. It makes every breath feel shallow. It's a low-level panic that never quite goes away. You aren't just sleeping, you are waiting. And as the silence of the night deepens, broken only by the coughing and the snoring, another realization hits you. The loss of time. You try to remember what day it is. Is it Tuesday? Is it Thursday? You realize you don't know. And worse, you realize it doesn't matter. In the workhouse, time doesn't exist in days or weeks. It exists in cycles. The bell. The cruel. The work. The prayer. The sleep. The bell. It is a perfect, seamless loop of monotony. Tomorrow will be exactly the same as today. The food will be exactly the same. The work will be exactly the same. This is called institutionalization. The system is designed to strip away your internal clock. It disconnects you from the rhythm of the outside world. Out there, people are going to markets. They are celebrating birthdays. They are reading newspapers. In here, there is only the gray, endless now. You look at the man in the bed next to you. He is staring at the ceiling too. His eyes are open, but they look dead. There is no spark in them. He has what they call the Pauper stare. It's the look of a man who has stopped planning for the future because he knows he doesn't have one. He has surrendered. He has accepted that he is just a number. You feel a wave of terror. Is that going to happen to me? You try to fight it. You try to hold on to a memory of your life before. You try to picture your old front door. You try to remember the taste of roast beef. You try to remember the sound of your wife laughing. But the memories feel slippery. They feel like they are fading, like old photographs left in the sun. The sensory overload of the workhouse, the smell of the carbolic acid, the taste of the skilly, the itch of the wool is overriding your past. This is the goal of the institution. To erase you. They want you to forget that you are a person with rights and dignity. They want you to believe that you belong here. They want you to be grateful for the gruel. You clench your fist under the blanket. You dig your nails into your palm until it hurts. I am not a pauper, you tell yourself. I am a man. I have a name. But it's getting harder to believe. The gaslight flickers. The shadows stretch and warp. The room feels like it is breathing. The snoring of 80 men sounds like a single, giant beast growling in its sleep. You feel incredibly small. You think about the outside world. It's only a few hundred yards away, over that brick wall. People are walking down the street right now. Free people. They are going home to soft beds. They are kissing their children goodnight. They don't know you are here. They don't care. To them, the workhouse is just a dark building they hurry past, a grim reminder of what happens when you fail. You are invisible. You are a ghost while you are still alive. And the loneliness? It's crushing. Even though you are surrounded by bodies, so close you can smell them, you are utterly alone. You can't make friends here. Everyone is too tired, too suspicious, too broken. You are a colony of isolated units, stacked on shelves like inventory. You close your eyes. You try to force yourself to sleep. You need to sleep. The bell will ring at 5 a.m. It always rings. It will never stop ringing. You drift into a half-sleep. But even in your dreams, you are picking oakum. Even in your dreams, you are hungry. The 24 hours are almost up. You have survived the cycle. You have done the time. But as you drift off, a final, dark thought settles over you. You survived today. Sure. But can you survive tomorrow? And the day after that? And next month? Most people didn't leave the workhouse by walking out the front gate. Most people left in a box. And that brings us to the final chapter of our story. The only true escape from the workhouse. The pauper's grave. And so, we come to the end. We have walked through the iron gates. We have smelled the carbolic soap. We have felt the itch of the wool and the sting of the oakum. We have tasted the watery gruel. We have heard the coughing in the dormitories. You have survived the 24-hour cycle. But for millions of people in the Victorian era, the cycle didn't end with the morning bell. It ended here. We are standing in a small, overgrown patch of ground behind the workhouse walls. It's raining because, let's be honest, in this story, it is always raining. The grass is long. There are no marble statues. There are no stone angels weeping. There are just mounds. Row upon row of grassy bumps in the earth. This is the pauper's grave. In the 19th century, death was everywhere. But even in death, the class system followed you. If you were rich, you got a mahogany coffin, a horse-drawn hearse with black plumes, and a stone monument that listed your achievements. If you were a workhouse inmate, you got the parish box. Let's talk about what happens when an inmate doesn't wake up for the 5 a.m. bell. First, the body is moved to the dead house. We saw it earlier from the infirmary window. It's a cold, stone shed. There is no ceremony yet. You are just inventory that has expired. Then, the clock starts ticking, This is the part that terrified the poor more than starvation. It terrified them more than the cold. It was called the Anatomy Act of 1832. Before this law, surgeons and medical students could only legally dissect the bodies of executed murderers. But medical science was booming. Doctors needed to learn anatomy. They needed bodies to practice on. And there weren't enough murderers to go around. So, the government made a deal with the workhouse system. They decided that if a pauper died and their body wasn't claimed by a relative within 48 hours, the workhouse master could donate or sell the body to a medical school. Think about the horror of that. You are dying in the infirmary. You know your family is poor. You know your wife can't afford a funeral. You know your children are working in a factory somewhere. You know that no one is coming to claim you. You know that your final destination isn't a churchyard. It's a dissection table. For the Victorians, this wasn't just about dignity. It was about religion. Many people believed in the physical resurrection of the body on Judgment Day. If you were cut into pieces by a medical student, you might not rise again. You would be lost forever. It was the ultimate punishment for poverty. The rich got to rest in peace. The poor became raw material for science. But let's say you are lucky. Let's say the master is feeling generous, or the medical schools are full. You get a funeral. But don't picture a nice service with flowers. The carpenter in the workhouse, usually another inmate, would knock together a coffin out of cheap, thin pine. Sometimes, to save money, they used a shell coffin. This was a reusable coffin. It looked normal from the top, but the bottom was hinged. They would carry you to the grave. The chaplain would mutter a few hurry prayers. He had 20 other funerals to do that day. They would lower the box into the hole. Then, they would pull a lever. The bottom would drop open. You would fall into the earth. Then, they would haul the empty coffin back up and take it back to the dead house for the next person. It was an assembly line of disposal. And you weren't buried alone. Space was expensive. So, paupers were buried in common graves. These were deep pits that were left open until they were full. You would be placed on top of strangers, stacked like firewood. 5, 6, maybe 10 bodies deep. And then, the earth was shoveled over. No headstone. No name. No dates. Just a number in a ledger somewhere in a dusty office. Inmate 482. Deceased. Buried November 14th. That's it. That is the sum total of your life's record. You look at the mounds of earth in the rain. It's easy to feel depressed by this. It's easy to feel angry. But I want you to think about something else. Beneath those mounds lie the people who built the modern world. These were the people who dug the canals. These were the people who wove the cotton for the empire. These were the people who laid the bricks for the great cities. They were the engine of the Industrial Revolution. They were used up and thrown away. But they were people. They fell in love. They told jokes. They sang songs in the pub before they lost their money. They comforted their children. They had favorite colors. They had dreams. The workhouse tried to erase them. It tried to turn them into numbers. It tried to make them feel small and shameful. But it failed. Because we are here. Right now. You and I. We are talking about them. We are remembering them. Every time we tell these stories, we are putting a marker on that grave. We are saying, I see you. I know what you went through. And I will not let you be forgotten. You take a step back from the grave. The rain is easing off. The clouds are breaking. A thin beam of moonlight hits the wet grass. You have spent 24 hours in their shoes. You have felt the phantom ache in your back. You have felt the ghost of hunger in your belly. You turn away from the dark shape of the workhouse. It looms there like a fortress, silent and grim. But you get to walk away. You get to open your eyes. You get to feel the warmth of your own bed. You get to go to your fridge and get a snack. You get to hug your family. So, as you drift off to sleep tonight, take a moment to appreciate the silence. Take a moment to appreciate the softness of your pillow. And maybe, just maybe, whisper a quiet goodnight to the ghosts of the workhouse. They deserve a little bit of kindness, even if it's 100 years too late. The gate is open, my friend. You can leave now. Sleep well.